Alright, for this video I want to go through the Schedule 8812 and we want to look at a scenario where the taxpayers have the child tax credit and the credit for other dependents. So in this example here we have a married couple with 3 children, one of which is going to qualify for the larger $2,000 credit, and then the other 2 children are only going to get the $500 other dependent credit. So we'll go through the 8812. And it is part of the full 1040 for the taxpayers, so we'll cover those schedules as well. And then have just one slide here covering some background on the child tax credit and the other dependent credit. So for 2023, the child tax credit is $2,000 per child, and that's for children that are under 17 at the end of the year. So they have to be 16 years old or younger in order to get this larger $2,000 credit. Now, the refundable portion of that credit is a maximum of $1,600 for 2023. It is pending a change in Congress right now, right? So they are trying to get this increased to $1,800 retroactively for 2023, and it was up anyway from the prior year. So $1,500 was the max in 2022. Now, the other dependent credit. Now, this is a much broader credit. This can apply for any dependents that are either your qualifying children or even a qualifying relative. So normally when we think of tax credits, child tax credits, it's a child or a younger brother or a niece or nephew. But the other dependent credit can apply to any kind of relative. So that might be, your mother or father that you're taking care of. But in a lot of cases, it really also just often happens with children that are not under this 17-year mark. So if you have a qualifying child that's over 16 but under 19 or less than 24 as a student, you might be eligible for the other dependent credit, which is that reduced $500 amount. So the big change here, or the difference, is really just the age. So if you have a child that would meet the qualifying child test for child tax credit purposes, and the only thing that they're really missing here is the age component, then you don't get the $2,000 CTC amount, you're going to get the $500 amount. So if we look at this example here for Jane and John taxpayer, they're filing a joint return, they have 3 children, and the ages are 13, 17, and 18. And this is as of the end of the tax year. Now, all 3 children are their dependents for 2023. And so the youngest child, age 13, is going to get this full $2,000 credit. The other 2, because they're over 16, right? They're 17 years of age and older, but they're still the dependents of Jane and John taxpayer. They're going to get the $500 other credit. So if we have a look at the return here, we've got John and Jane. We can see that they are reporting all 3 children as their dependents here. But notice that the youngest child, Alex, the 13-year-old, he is eligible for the child tax credit, and then the check boxes over here for the other 2 children are just getting the credit for other dependents. Now, as far as their income, we can see they've got the wages, some investment income, and they're claiming the standard deduction for the year. Their AGI is $268K. And so for married filing joint taxpayers, that's going to put them under the $400,000 threshold, so they shouldn't have any phase-outs for those child tax credits. So if we start with Part 1 here, we see their AGI reported there of $268,953. And then on line 4, where it asks, how many qualifying children do we have under age 17 with the required SSN? So we have 1 child under the age of 17, and so we're going to multiply by 2,000 and we get a $2,000 credit. Now on line 6, it's asking us how many other dependents do we have, including qualifying children who are not under 17 or do not have the required SSN. Well, in our case, we've got 2, right? We have 2 other qualifying children that are our dependents, but they are not under age 17. So we enter 2 in box 6 and multiply by $500, and so we got a $1,000 amount there. So the total credit that we're initially eligible for is $3,000, right? We got one $2,000 CTC amount. We have two ODC amounts at $500 each for $1,000. And so $3,000 is potentially what we can get here. Now the filing status, they're married filing joint, so there's the $400,000 threshold. And we can see that their AGI is well under that at $268,000. So they're not going to need to do any kind of phase outs down here on lines 10 or 11. So now line 12 asks, is the amount on 8 more than the amount on line 11? And the answer is yes. And so now we enter the result there on line 12 and then complete the credit limit worksheet. Why? And the credit limit worksheet, this is important because the child tax credit, the other dependent credit, they are non-refundable credits. So what that means initially is you can only use the credit to the extent you have a tax liability. So if we look at the 8812 credit limit worksheet, line 18 of our 1040 is the amount of tax that they are liable for based on their income. So if we look at line 18, we can see line 18 there is the amount of taxes that they're liable for based on their taxable income of $241,000. So they got the 44,552, and after reporting $44,552 of tax, we can see that they're going to be able to use the full amount of $3,000 because they have plenty of taxes here. So $3,000 is going to be the combined amount of their child tax credit and other dependent credit, and so that's reported here on line 19. So we've got the child tax credit or credit for other dependents from 8812, $3,000. So their tax of $44K is reduced by $3,000, so the net amount they have here before factoring in those other taxes is $41,552. Now, as far as is there any additional child tax credit? So the additional child tax credit, it's reported down here on line 28 if they're eligible for it. In this case, they're not going to be able to claim any additional child tax credit because they've used everything that they were eligible for as a non-refundable credit, right? So if we look in Part 2A where we calculate the ACTC, it asks us to subtract line 14 from line 12. So if we look up here, we've got line 14 is 3,000, line 12 is 3,000. So if we subtract 3K from 3K, we get 0. And as it notes here, right, if 0 stop here, there is no additional child tax credit available. So skip the rest of Part 2A, skip 2B, and then just enter 0 on line 27 for the additional child tax credit amount. All right, so that covers it for this video. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to leave a question or comment below. I try to get to as many of those as I can, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you.